We did take some steps when we did the virtual, now in branch, we really want to make sure that we create a great experience and folks really understand, what are they joining and getting a really full picture of that. You have go-to-market, you have finance, you have HR. I think some of those are coming a little bit more to pause. And so I think that's where I probably suggest if you are looking, squeaky wheel gets the grease. You may not always have that job posting. We are expanding heavily in APAC. So APAC, I would say, is a mix of both sales as well as tech-based talent. So engineering, front-end, back-end engineers, UI, UX developers. Next piece is diversity, right? And having very DEI focus. And so are we really well-rounded? Do we have folks from different cultures and different backgrounds and different gender identity is really important to have on top of that.
Good morning. So today I have Jake with us, who has been in the talent acquisition space for quite a while because he understands for a company to succeed, great talent is required. He is working with a company that recently just got awarded the Unicorn Company Award, where it cost a valuation of $1 billion. Let's welcome Jake on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom, where he will tell us about what it is like working with a unicorn company, especially when a lot of companies are trying to save up on cash and are laying a lot of people off. So let's welcome Jake on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom. Hi, Jake. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Ready to...
How's your day going?
Pretty awesome. It's kind of a feel-good industry and love what I do and love helping folks get hired and find positions. And so just always enjoyed this industry and market. So excited to continue and help out any way I can with any knowledge I can share. So.
Of course. So, Jake, we won't take more than 10 minutes. So just let's get started on how you got into talent recruitment in the first place.
Yeah. I think I probably did a journey like most people. You don't go to college thinking about recruiting. So I went to college. I did financial economics and really just knew that I probably wanted to get into sales. And so I did a whole bunch of sales things. I did door-to-door sales. I did collection calls. Work hard, play hard type of mentality, pick up the phone, dial 100 times a day, just trying to get any meeting set. And then I landed into recruiting. I started with an agency called Insight Global, which was kind of the best boot camp I think I could say for recruitment when I started that, because I had no idea what recruiting was. So the agency was very heavy on sales at the time. And so the journey was to be a recruiter, put a foot in the door and improve yourself. And then you'd be able to get moved into like an account executive or a sales type of position. So total boot camp. I supported all tech companies in the Seattle area. So Microsoft, F5, Amazon, you name it. Any of the big giants here, we did mainly tech-based positions. And so dialed a lot of calls and had a lot of conversations, a lot of profiles of people, went through that journey. And then from there, I transitioned over to a company called Harvey Nash, where I became a market director and oversaw the what was Houston and Denver-based market. So we built up that market from scratch, and I was able to hire the recruiters and the sales team, and we broke into cool accounts, mainly in oil and gas and telecommunications, based on that region. And after that was, personal life journey. We're having a kid. And so we wanted to come back to Seattle, and my wife's like, we're going back. So that was the call. I joined Amazon. So I was at Amazon for 5 years for the consumer-based business. And for that, we mainly focused on senior technical talent, mainly developers, machine learning, SDMs, TPMs, software development managers. I know I go through a lot of acronyms in this industry. So but did that, and that was such a fun journey. We would travel the world. I think we would host about 75 events each year. Wow. And then we would travel to those events, try to create a really positive candidate experience and go to them and bring the interviewers with us. And we would interview them in hotel rooms, and we'd actually change the hotel rooms to actually be interview-based rooms. So it wasn't weird with like a bed in it. We actually did some cool stuff with that. And then we really kind of placed them into Canada or the US based on visas and how that kind of worked. And so we did that process there for a long time and really enjoyed that journey. Then I went to another company, which was kind of short-lived. You kind of learn some things. I would say that was a learning for me. I think I wanted to didn't find a company that maybe that matched as much as my values, because it's so important as an employee. Like, what are your values? What's really important? And that's where I found Branch, and been really stoked about this. This is my first pre-IPO based company. Very fortunate. We feel very fortunate as kind of we're, at least in North America, through that recession, right? As we kind of get ready and gearing for that. Having some cash in the bank and play with that, and be able to hire through this kind of challenging time. Not all markets are the same. I'd say APAC is pretty exploding, a pretty candidate driven market, but been awesome. So it's been awesome to be part. I think you called it the unicorn company so far. So it's been pretty fun to take that journey and see that the values of Branch, such as ownership and grit and humility, really hold true. And it's just been an amazing atmosphere to work through. So a little bit about my journey to where I am today.
Wow. So you've had a whole 180-degree journey from working with agencies and working with big giant companies and then being a part of growing so many companies. So Jake, would love to understand, before the pandemic, you could fly over the world, you could meet candidates in person, you could have that seamless hiring process journey but now these days a lot of interview processes are online. So, because you've been in the space for quite a while, I would love to understand, how do you still create a personalized hiring journey for a lot of candidates? Because I think the hiring process specifically mimics the way the company will welcome you when you actually join the company. So, how is your hiring process like currently at Branch specifically? If someone joins, that would give them a good reflection of how it would be like working with your actual company.
Yeah, no, great question. With the pandemic, everything went virtual, right? And the flights and the in-person meetings all became to a pause. And I think, at first it was just a big step and change in the industry. How do we get to virtual? How do we do code assessments, for example? How do we look at system design? How do you actually evaluate the skills appropriately on a virtual setting? I think that was one of our first big steps of doing that. And then on top of that, how do we add things such as candidate experience and DEI and all those really important factors that we think about? So we did take some steps when we did the virtual. Now in Branch, we really want to make sure that we create a great experience and folks really understand, what are they joining, and getting a really full picture of that. So I think, a lot of that starts with the very first recruiter, really making sure that we are working with the candidates in depth, understanding like what is really important to them in their next journey. And we'll call it hand holding, but really being that point of contact throughout that whole process. And so we can answer all those base questions. So a lot of I would say increased recruiter contact through that process, just to make sure that, and knowing that some of those gaps may exist. On top of that, as the interviews go today, really making sure that we have a really sound, structured interview loop. One of them is obviously you want to meet your own team. So we take that in consideration. We want to make sure that of a 5-panel interview, for example, 2 of them are focused on the team that you'll be working with, especially your hiring manager. We see the data show that most people will accept a position if they understand the hiring manager and the team that they're on. If they're in that loop or in that gap, less likely for an offer accept, or maybe that pairing, that connection that you're actually trying to make. Next piece is diversity, right? And having very DEI focus. And so are we really well-rounded? Do we have folks from different cultures and different backgrounds and different gender identity is really important to have on top of that. And the last thing that we do is we have a bar raiser. And I think the bar raiser is a mixed term depending on what company you come from. Our bar raiser is more making sure that our founders get to meet everyone through the interview process, and everyone gets to meet our founders, right? They're really kind of the backbone of what creates company culture. I think we're all owners of culture, but it starts with them, and then we help it build from the ground up. So we want to make sure that everyone gets that opportunity to meet with them and have a live chat with them. And it's always great to see, a founder actually take that time through each interview to meet folks. So we have five different folks that do that across the board. And so those are some of the steps that we've taken in the virtual aspect. But I will say now, with the pandemic kind of coming to a slow, we'll see where it goes. We are looking to bring it back on site. We think that there is still some of that candidate experience that just can't be replicated virtually and done well on site. So we are thinking about ways to, how do we bring that back? And also how do we make sure that we don't create a negative environment with the pandemic and taking all those factors in place too. So.
No, that makes sense. I think increased recruiter contact, because I think I've read so many posts where people are like, "Oh, I got reached out to by a recruiter and then he ghosted me." So I think that excessive contact, making sure that the candidates are part of every part of the journey of the hiring process, making sure that they're being given updates and everything, just helps them feel like they're part of something even before they're actually part of the company. So I can definitely see why people would want to be a part of your company, because I can see that all your recruiters embody the values of your company specifically. Because yes, CEOs, the people in the C-suite do embody the values, but every candidate, every employee has a certain responsibility to showcase the values of the company. And they are definitely doing that. So thank you for sharing that, Jake. So two last questions, Jake. One of them would be, a lot of people are being laid off these days. I think there's been this question going on, should people be making a move right now, or should they be sticking with their current job just because the market is so unstable right now? Because you've been in the space for quite a while, would love to understand your perspective on that.
Yeah. Really depends on what job family you're looking at. Um, we see some of the, I would say, more recent companies that have gone public are taking some of their bigger hits. So recognizing where you're at, I think, is one of those. If you're part of some of the FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, if you will, you usually have a fairly good security blanket. But if you are in some of those sectors that maybe have gone recently public and the market is taking a turn and we see these layoffs occurring, it's always good to kind of recognize where you're at, right? Compared to where you are in a pre-IPO, for example. Are you in day one of a pre-IPO? Are you in a Series F funding of an IPO, cash in the bank? And so kind of recognizing where you are within the market and what your company's stance in that. For, I would say, kind of tech-based positions, high demand-based positions, the market's still there. I think for a lot of my friends that come approach me that are in that type of space, I still encourage them to get out there now. I think now is your one time over the next few months to really apply and be aggressive at it. If you want to find a home that maybe provides a little bit more stability, I still think those positions are open, but I think that may not be the case in the next 3 to 6 months. So we see those positions still existing today, but be aware that may not be there. And I'm talking about Namer here specifically. So then you have some others, positions that you have go to market, you have finance, you have HR. I think some of those are coming a little bit more to pause. And so I think that's where I probably suggest, if you are looking, squeaky wheel gets the grease. You may not always have that job posting, but still be going out there. I would suggest, go on LinkedIn, find out who's a recruiter there, find out who's in that industry, who's the finance manager, build connections, network. I think it's really important to do that. So when those opportunities do arise, you're one of the first ones that they think about, because we have to understand there will be increased competition on a single rec, considering that the demand and supply is actually shifting and rotating.
No, I think you highlighted an important point, because I read it somewhere that you should start looking for a job even when you don't need it, just because you're building on your network. And it's not like you always have to get the value immediately. Connections that you make 3-4 months before could actually lead into a job opportunity a year later. So you never know how things turn out. So thank you for sharing that, Jake. Last question, Jake. Your company is growing, it's actively hiring. Would love to understand some of the positions that you have open and that you're actively hiring for.
Yeah. So I think hot off the press for right now is sales-based positions. So we're really looking for account executives and software sales development representatives. So recent grads that may be getting out there and want to try their spot in technical sales, and then also folks who have been more established in SaaS-based companies, mid-size based companies, understand how to sell technical products. That's definitely hot off the press for us, specifically for North America. We are expanding heavily in APAC. So APAC, I would say, is a mix of both sales as well as tech-based talent. So engineering, front-end, back-end engineers, UI, UX developers, software development managers, security-based positions in the Bangalore area is definitely in high expansion as we look at different ways to save money, but also hire great talent. And how do we do that? So I would say those are probably our main focus ones. And I think in the next 6 months, we'll see probably a good explosion in the LATAM market for us, which would be exciting. But we'll see where we go over the next 6 months as we go through that.
Yeah, okay. Now, I think global hiring has been a recent trend just because companies want to hire great talent, but then again, reduce costs as well, which makes sense because you could hire the same amount of good talent in countries at a cheaper cost, which makes sense. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Jake, for sharing about your experiences, what you've learned along the way, how you're making a difference when it comes to hiring, and making sure that each person that is applying to your company has a personalized and a very positive experience. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.